the settings of our realities and puts everything into dualities to our systems. To modify that is just truly understand how to represent yourself in 12-dimensional layers of perspectives. Perspective is basically not seeing different things, just seeing a different perspective of a circulation rotations and all timelines all at once. That's how you see the perspective. And it's all in your imagination. Knowing imagination is how to use your imagination, you already know. So we're going to get more into the webbing lines. Let's get into graph line centers of travel. And we go in position of circulation and triangulations over lines, graphing line outside lines of travel, and set communication. They all travel all together, don't they? So remember, they look separated, but they're not. There's no separation. They're connected to each other through flux. And if you look really close, you can see the percentage. Or where they in your mind communicate with their systems and set interaction. Right? So they communicate with each other. They change their own imaginations, sending files back to each other. It's that position, it's operation. Okay? Files back and forth, right? All through triangulation, all through box. Thinking outside the box is a metric meters of its scale in its own system, balancing these things out and to understand how to use that in travel calculations. So you can put everything in a platform align centers. We got 5 volumes, and we got 3 calculation screen lines. Thumbs up. Okay, that process line position, 8 on standby, 6 on measure, 5 on scale, 7 lines of setting sequence, 5 equals lines of 1, process lines of 6, over lines of 2. So it's a constantly having a story with it, and all through travel. And all lines is position, travel, and set calculations. But it's all in circulation in the same rotation. It has to be in the same rotation. It has to. Because they're going to their own course, their own space, their own travel. Rotation, right? So that's what we have to come into. It's the layers of 12th dimension and seeing it in perspective. Let's go. Same line. So the graph itself is a lattice, climbing that ladder. Okay? The ladder itself is just a film strip, how you see it on different levels. Let's see the platforms of set position its operation. Building that through construct that puts you in the lines of high position its operation cycle. That gets you ready and prepared how to go through the 12 centers of its perspective, how you see things, all through travel, all through communication. Okay? All through triangulation of box frames. Even that's traveling on its own system. So layers of communication, lacing lines, high center inference lattice, 4 centers and 5 lines of sequence. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of bedding. And process lines. Set travels communication setting. Indicate grounds. Process 1, process 2, and set lines of door, direction and time frame. Sets travels, graph screens, operation lines of sequence, and platforms, location of structure, design line. Platitude lines, operation lines, operation line sequence, platitude, and operation lines of settings to set positions calculation. Okay? So, like I said, it's Doctor Strange, but it's connecting the dots. It's connecting the lacing lines into the lattice and different levels of communication. Okay, how you see the formations of the structure of design. Okay, that you create things in your mind. The information cycle, your imagination is always growing. It's never in the same frequency as set lines of travel. It's always in direction line communicates to its cycle. Okay, but creating around that is very powerful stuff through schematics, and it's drawing itself. See it from this angle, that angle, this angle, this angle, that angle, this angle, right? So you know the different angles all at once. Process in that position location, let's get across lines, 4 to 2 location lines of X over screen. That process lines of direct centers and platitude location and triangulation over lines, process lines of 2 arrow indication. So what I'm constantly doing, guys, is just creating modification lines of imaging that constantly change different levels how you see the structure of its design line, of its schematic location of its yards, and its meters of its building itself. Seen it at all different levels of travel. But it's a constantly growing situation. We can platform in position to Fibonacci, operation line sequence of bandwidth over streaming, Or we can allocate time frame, process line, inset line, and rotation, travels endpoint length throughout 3 buildings and lines of sequence, lines of travel. And they all work together in set calculation. You can see the triangulation settings to all position location of all travel. That indicates times centers, time reference, times pi, 3 panels of operation lines of travel of communication. Okay, now it's going to get more complicit in position your travel's point graphs. Portals is lines of sequence, platforms are lines of high centers, 144Q, 144.1, and 144.2. Sent lines of communication. 3 convergence setting, 3 x2000s and platforms and travel. Directing on standby and rotation lines of spin cycles and communication, right? 3 convergence lines of story lines supports the lattice and rotation lines of grounds. Platitude lines because I'm constantly changing my imagination, right? Because I'm constantly evolving myself, right? So once you recognize yourself in 12th division and you understand how to see different levels of perspective, then you're seeing all timelines all at once and everything's evolving all at once, but it's all going in the same direction, a projector, a projection. You understand how to rewind your projector. It's how to rewind everything of its projection. Understand how to go through the lacing lines, communication lines, high center interference, snowy graph interference, magnetic interference, electronic interference, high lines of screen adaptation of flux, process of indications, setting, calculating, modify, all through travel. Center operation lines to time and flux capacitor and travel and 4 to 2 locations setting and streaming. See, the structure gets more and more exciting. Okay, through observation. Intent, influence. Once you get an intent, now you're traveling through it, which means you're modifying your system and you're creating more levels of your imagination, of indication. Okay? And you can see it on all different 4 angles because it's constantly changing the flux of time. It's really interesting when you see that inside line condition setting to its string theory. Planetary lines, circulation ground centers, sequence lines of platforms, high course centers, synchronized course center communication lines in set position, SkyNet, sky grids, sky panel, sky operation line condition setting and travel. But it converts the systems all through operation setting. Okay, you just keep going with it. Use your imaginations and just platitude lines because you're constantly, you can stay on one graph screen, one film projector, and formulate and simulate different lines of travel. Change the triangulation of sacred geometry locations, change the communication lines of grounds lines of sequence, change the information system off the attractions. Okay, you can add bandwidth and screening. That process, of course, centers and line conditions setting off the travel. Okay, or you can bring colors, lines, and patterns inside line communication. Inside the void, outside light creations. Okay, picture framing. Okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing lattice indication. Okay, so lines, puts position all its faults, have communication setting, and travel. Fault communication time frame, time rotation lines at grounds, and platitude locations, all right? Changing the false of narratives and the truth of measure scale of indication. Okay? So it's just becoming out more mass and volume now, right? Let's get in the green lines. Okay, we'll go with the inside rotation and 3 lines of lattice and location lines of grounds. Okay. Now we're going to change the picture frame and direct lines of grounds communication sequence, platitude locations. So you can see the mass and volume. You can see it like stand out now, right? So you're seeing different perspective, right? The perceptive to perceptive to perceptive. 3 settings in the setting lines of perspective itself, location and perceiving, location of consciousness. Let's bring in pink. So all you're seeing is the landmass now, and the volume, seeing like it coming out of its system, of its operation. Okay. It depends how thick you want the lattice to be in time frame of mass. Okay. That puts volume, position, location, measure, and scale. Okay. Because you can really see it stand out. So coming into that position, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. you see got 4 now. So you got lines of 8 to go. So we're going to color the lines, ground centers, and sequence line, platitude, location of fading. We're going to infade lines and set lines of travel, templates and tablets, and convergence, and set calculation. Okay, so now you're seeing more of it. Now we're going to go through pi directions, grounds, as platted locations and void itself. Stripping lines, anomaly, cross line, screen. Okay, so I'm going to change the lines to set position as optical illusion. Okay, 4 set calculations: pyramid 1, pyramid 2, pyramid 3, pyramid 4. So we got 1 pyramid over lines of 2, cross lines of 3. Okay, indicates lines of 4 over travel. Okay, so we bring that in, calculation, setting, and screen adaptations of mass and volume. Okay, see the face recognition? There's the face right there. Right? Face stance precedes everything and set position lines, operation lines of sequence. Platitude locations bringing outside lines of travel of communication. Right? So you don't know if it's going in or if it's going out. Remember the horse going this way or going that way? Right? It's a time format. You don't know if I'm going forward or if I'm going backwards. Right? So you don't know if you've seen it from above or you don't know if you're seeing it from below. Right? So it's confusing to your mind, but it's just the optical illusion how you see frames in 1 pyramid to 2 pyramids to 3 or 4 pyramids all at once. Now you split lines of 4. Okay, you've seen different levels of pyramids now. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of pi. Okay, now if I change to templates and tablets, that's 4 over 3, and add position lines of settings. Process indicates lines of 12 clocking into 1, into 2, and into 3 lines of scale. Now that indicates lines of 3 over lines of 4, process lines of 5, sets lines of high centers of 6, indicates lines of 7, process lines of 8, 9 lines of travel, and set calculation. Directing ground centers, 10 over sequence, and 11 over line rotation. Okay? So every time you set up a formula, you're changing sacred geometry of travel and time frame. So this helps you to really understand how to indicate in mass and volume and set position of settings off the calculation. Okay? And you can see it on different angles too. Information. Doesn't matter how you look at it. It's just you're seeing it in a different perspective. But you're seeing it all time lines at once. There it is again. There's another face. Different face, different travel. Same process, just different frequency. Okay, there's the face recognition. So it doesn't matter. I always see a face. Face precedes everything. That's what protects you and what you're doing through cautioning of your design lines that you go through as projections of your travels. That process you in set positions. Let's go through circulation over 1 and circulation over 6 over 9 over 12. Okay, this is getting interesting now, right? Let's do a 45 split on an angle line screen location. Let's change formation lines of grounds. Okay, remember, this is the process of all lines. So we got lattice lines of void, we got lattice lines of red, green, and pink. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we got 4 layers. Okay, we have 8 more to go. So we're going to work with the outside lines. That's going to basically process your indicates and setting how you see the optical lines of its illusion, which brings you into the power of mind and perception itself. All right, so we'll go with the line set positional set tractions into blue, inside line. Okay, 2 lines of signals, 3 lines of travel. Okay. Okay, so see, I'm bringing it out now. See, you don't know if it's going forward or backwards, or if it's running this way, it's running that way. Which way is it running through projection, right? So it's templates of systems, platitude lines, change the lattice and mass and volume, and pi generation screen locations. Okay. So we have power 1 over 5th, time frame, times calculation 6 over power, and travel communication. All right. And we do the same indication lines into rectangle box frame. That travel indicates lines of flux. Okay. And we circulate the graph, operation sequence, and face facade, or rotation lines of ground, set lines of travel. Okay, so now you see everything in set position. Now you just see a crystal line condition setting. It's like a crystal line rotations and position lines set tractions, which is now an orb. The orb itself is a known calculation of grounds. Simulation over 1, process lines over 4 over 6, 12 line rectangular time frame, lattice of communication lines, lacing lines of frame communications, right? So this takes everything out. Now you focus on this, right? And you bring it inside lines of travel. Okay? So it's amazing how you see that formation setting all through set travel communications. Inside face recognition. There's the face. Now, if I turn it this way, you can see the platform. If I bring it in this way, you can see the runway. But if you look really close now, you see it as a shape, as a box. So you see the void and you see the gray, right? So light, stage, and shadows all through a set position of its operation. But see how it's traveling? Inside the position locations, mirror resolution lines, operation sequence, and time frame location. Okay? It's just an optical illusion how we see things that run into our film strips, our own design lines. And how we see it in panels. Look at that. Okay? And again, it's coming in, traveling through. In the center operation, the set tractions. So use that fortitude and lights of all communication at different angles. How you see that in structure is how you see that in locations. Okay, it's amazing how you see that in face recognition. But it's the optical illusion how you put everything all together in set lines of travel. Okay? Because that's all it is travel direction and timeline. Okay, so let's get into white over lines, graphic course centers into high position of escape. We'll indicate ground centers sequence, latitude 1 line centers of 4 set lines of travel. Okay, we're going inside line condition setting, set convergence. Okay, so we're changing the structure, crossing angles, and all position lines of setting. Cross lines, angles, lines, schematics over 1, 3 centers of communication of primers and travel, right? So I'm changing the scale, I'm changing the measure, I'm changing the platforms, I'm showing you a different perspective how you see things of operation, okay? It's how you see the optical illusion of you guys and the astral projection of yourself, okay? Bring it in. All you're going to see is mass and volume as you bring things in. Okay, layer after layer after layer. Not this way, layers, guys, layers. See it on multiple levels of layers, and then you see it travel on its own system. But it's all connected to its own setting. We're linked in one network and one design, all right? So we'll graph these signals, our communications formula. 45 angles, split lines of 1/3 over graph, one power over travel. Now you see in the layers. See the layers that go up. So it's interesting how you see it in all fortitude location setting lines of travel and different angles. Right now you see the structure of the building this way. Now you see the structure of the building that way. Right, so it's confusing to the mind, isn't it? It's an optical illusion. I see in platform. Now if I bring in the void again. Okay, let's bring this angle, line cross location, and set lines and position lines of travel. Okay, and I do this, crosses this, there's the structure, there's the building. Okay, but everything's always constantly traveling and evolving itself. Split lines of anomaly, 3 travels of communication, 6 lines of measure. Okay, now if I do this, you can see the platform. If I do this, you can see the runway, right? So you've seen different layers of communication all through imagination, guys. Okay? So that's what you want to do is top layers, each layer, each dimension in a different perspective and set travel. Okay, so when you're done with that, you can do this, you can do this. You can go outside through pi now. Okay, and when you go outside through pi, you're outside lines of signals now. So you did your platforms in set position settings. Start with 12 line signals, 12 lines of measure, 12 lines of scale, 12 lines of communication convergence, 12 lines of set and position of south. That processing case lines of formula through equation, directing ground science line sequence. Applied 2 lines. I'm going to change the schematics of our screen, adaptation of process, line direct lines of indication. Okay, so I'm doing layer after layer after layer after layer of different dimensions of 12. Process here, and 3 settings of scale. Right, so you've seen inside and outside, you see, what do you see? At different levels of communication. Right? There's the runway. All right, now creating that line centers, bringing the void lines, bring position locations. All right, there's an X3000 on data station. Right, set convergence, data port, and set lines of travel. Process indications, enter set line rotations, mothership, and set positions operation. It's all identified through travel and set lines of communication. But everything travels all together all at once, right? Okay. Now I'm just doing one graph screen, one window frame, set position lines. It all goes through the information bits as it goes through cells, a modification. Let's go into gold cycles. Graph set 3 centers, 4 set, 5, 6, lines 8, 12, 24. Okay, change layers of division and locations, grafting screens, adaptation of flux. Okay, cross and angles, triangulation, 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 triangulation. Okay, over signals, over setting, and all levels of lattice of communications into all graph communicational webbing. There's the webbing. Okay, you look really, really close. You can see Earth rotation. Let's change graph lines. Triangulation over flux over ground centers of sequence. Apply the 2 lines, operation lines of travel. Let's go on line connections and convert the system the opposite location of angles. Different angles, different travel. Now, triangulate line condition setting. You put triangulations above the system, outside signals and location of perimeters and parameters. When they're in set positions, travel lines, over line signals, ground centers of sequence, and platform communication. All right, change formation lines to time lines, change position lines of panel, operation lines of travel. All right, change it again, set calculation ground centers, lines of sequence, and position. All right, there's 5 lines of scale. It's really interesting. You bring that in calculations, right? So I'm just graphing through a canvas and different levels of volume and mass. So you can understand how to go through 12 line rotations in your calculation graph lines in your schematics over pi. So that indicates lines into lattice over word travels, directing ground centers of webbing, and 3 grounds of surface and travel communication. Okay. Change timeline loops and location lines of grounds in sequence. Okay, so let's change another structured line ground centers, see it on a different level, a set line rotation. Okay, change graph screens. All right, so all these layers, lacing layers, communication layers, electrical line layers, signature layers, heat signature layers, light signature lines of communication, it's all levels of mass and how you see different levels of perspective, seeing all timelines all at once, moving in rotation of motion, see? Motion, see? Look at my fingers. You don't know which fingers I'm traveling through, which ones are going where, but they're all going in the same direction. Because a film projector goes forward, it doesn't go back. To go back, you have to rewind. And when you rewind, you go back to the failsafe, but you're at a different frequency, but you're always coming into a different levels of expedition. Going through the astral projection is all levels of travels, guys. That's how you indicate different lines of travel communications. Okay, green central lines, operation lines, position lines of portals as set lines of travel. Okay, bring it in, circulation of ground set lines of sequence. So it gets more complicated in simulation, inside calculation. But see, the simulation is already set up in your system. All platforms, all setting, all operation system, how you see it through your pyramids of activation. Okay, your simulation is already set up. There's nothing for you to do because your structure is already set up. inset lines of a dimensional door. There's the door. There's the light. There's your Earth. There's the X3000. There's the shining beam. Coming down, prosthetic positions, you're in a platform of communication. Okay? So, using your imagination, it's amazing what you do as you constantly get into lines of communication, lines of balance, directing what you're doing in position lines of high centers. Inside, outside. Outside lines, set positions, it's operation. Okay, let's go through void sequence. Platitude lines, centers. Let's just get into black and white. Okay, process lines into fonts. Change formation lines of grounds and sequence. But we're going to go with one location, all lines all at once. All time frames all at once. In its position, energy lines of motion, and travel communication system, all through calculation. There you go. Another drawing. So we go through this way, we go through this way, and then we go through 4 pyramids again. Just different levels, different volume, different mass. More complicated in the mind, how we use that in that position. This is not a 12th dimensional set position now, guys. Right? This is a 24th dimension. 4 box frames. Now we change the ground center to sequence in platforms of communication setting. Okay? Now, you don't know if you're looking outside or looking in. Am I walking this way, or are you seeing it from above or below? See, that's the optical illusion, how you see things in graph of communication. Structured lines, division, location, setting, which is the power of perception, which is the illusion. That puts in all communications, how you see things all through travels and set calculation. Very complicated to the mind, or what it's processing through in set lines of travel. Okay? But you're always going to see a triangulation box of a simulator all through programs, right? But that's like one continuous line that volumes itself in mass and volume in set travel. Okay, so if I keep adding layers, I'm not 24 anymore. I'm 48, I'm 72. So if I change the layers, I'm changing time formats and time frequencies. That change the convergence system and time lines, correlations to positions, operates lines of windows, and frame communication lines of grounds and set travel. Okay, but it's always traveling all together, all in one. One synchronicity, one unity, one setting, one trinity, all at once. All right, but they're all going in the same direction, guys. Same direction, same direction, same direction. So they're constantly evolving themselves in set lines of travel. Look at that in set calculation. Okay, and always see it on 4 different angles in set lines of travel. Okay, because all your simulation geometric shapes are already set up. All angles, all settings, all your set position is operation of communication. Okay? It's how you place yourself through observation. Seeing setting attractions, directing ground centers, new story frame coming in, setting here, and operation lines of sequence. Platitude line centers, and set travel communications. Look at the bandwidth and streaming that you can do through line settings. Constantly creating stories and position lines of dimension. Starting off with 12, working with 24 in set position to 144. It's all through 144 of coloration lines of patterns of light metaphors. Look what you can create. And what you created, it creates its own system and its own modification lines. So the faster we go, the more you see the face. All right? And the face comes out. It just comes out. See? Like that. See my hand? See that? See, that's the mass and volume. See? Mass, volume, mass, volume, mass, volume. Longitude, latitude, longitude, latitude. Okay, your lattice. Set longitude, latitude. Longitude, latitude. So how fast am I going through division? See, watch my finger. See? How many fingers are showing up? How many fingers are traveling? Through dimension of space and time. So understanding those layers that you go through. See, watch my hand. See, my hand's going everywhere all at once. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm seeing all timelines all at once. I'm seeing all frame colorations. I'm seeing all dimensions of space-times all at once. All through finger point graphs of communication. So it's incredible when you start to recognize that. And you can do that in just one graph screen and constantly change the platform. Okay, go this way. Change the fonts, change the color lines of pattern. Outside signal, inside location. Okay, inside line rotations, inside calculation. All right. So what dimension is this? Well, it's up to you what dimension it is. All right. So remember, you're always in the triangulation box, but you're outside the box itself. It doesn't exist. What does exist is your hand just keeps moving and expanding itself. See? It's never in the same location, but it's all timelines at once, and everything is happening all at once. That's change the frames of communication, setting, operation lines, and sequence locations that converts the system, all timelines, the position, operation, and cycle. So it's very powerful when you recognize that through time frame. Crossing angles, stripping lines of anomaly, center operation lines of sequence, and platform of communication. Right? So you're overriding everything, you're putting everything on standby, and you're bringing things out, and you bring that in volume. So you go through time frame, time frame, time frame. Every second, every mile, every meter, every metric, every scale, every balance of communication. Layer after layer after layer after layer. So you just have to understand how to go through the pi lines and generation lines of screens. Process here, clocking center, screen adaptation. Okay. So you get a 12-line panel, process lines of 1 over signals, 3 centers of measure, 6 lines of scale, process lines 6, 7 lines of 8, 9 lines of setting the travel, 10-line rotation, into 11 communication. There's a clock right there, travel. Working with inside line condition setting, process indicates setting and travel calculation. Metric meters of webbing indicates cross-line cross-examination system and calculations. Inside calculation lines of greens, inside rotations, and formulation line rotation travel. Working with the webbing system, electrical line grids, webbing line rotations, and travel calculations. Your webbing system and set traction. Okay. Interweaving is around this system and around the setting. Process all through you and set calculation. Okay, and you work with the inside line, interweaving, interwoven, and travel communication. Right? Bring it out. There's inside position. Okay, but look at the landmass that you can work. And I'm just working with one box frame all the time, just constantly changing the travel. So that's what it is, guys. Then you set a webbing here, bring it in. You want to bring it in because you can see a lot more inline setting in sequence. Platform here, docking station here, platform here, docking station here, platform here, docking station here. Okay, your longitude, latitude, locations. All the docking stations are set up so the X2000s can come into their hangars, so their docking bays. Different coloration lines of space, process here, set lines of travel. Bring that in, I'll show you in set position, it's operation. Docking station over here, different lines of coloration, lines of travel, pink. Process over here. Okay, also setting all through flux. Okay, and indicate position lines of travel. Change the coloration lines of grounds, set position, or just the void itself. Process docking station here, and set lines of travel. Okay, so going beyond your imagination, look what you can create through expansion. All through clocking center. So it's all levels of different dimensions that you're going through. Layer after layer after layer after dimension after space over time. Okay? It's all light signals that travel all through position. Okay? Look at that. Look at illuminate. See? It's illuminating now. See? The light is changing travel and communication. So it's going faster now. And when it starts going faster, everything starts going to a continuous force of times continuance that modifies the system. It keeps expanding itself of nothing with masses, everything to its equation, because you're changing the networks, you're changing the server, you're changing the private providers, you're changing your system through all levels of levitation, high lines of massive volume of longitude, latitude that change the streamings of you in your settings. that puts position lines of balance and all through travel. This helps you to get in position lines of calculations. Hold on and signal. So how we operate this, guys, is all based on understanding how to see the massive volume of divisions of dimensions. Starting off with your 12, going with your 24, because it's all lines traveling through a rainbow of graph communication and screening that processes U and indications, all through lights of provision. Okay, how you see that inside lines into the webbing system. It's that calculation. Right, so light has changed, see? The drawing's changed. The directions has changed. The operation has changed. Everything keeps expanding so that nothing ever is at the same frequency as space and time. And it doesn't matter how you see it, it's constantly a different drawing. But it's traveling all together, all at once, expanding itself, evolving itself in that settings. All through communications, through a clocking system of a webbing setting. Okay, got to bring it in really close to see it. See, look at illumination changed again, see? Illumination comes a beacon light, right? All through travel. And the more we identify how to see our transponders, have our transistors, have our resistors, then we can understand how to see our lights of communication, going all lines, all at once, and send just lines of travel, see? That constantly goes to different levels of transformations and the transition lines, E factors, E screens, communication lines of ground, communication ash projections go through different levels of travels in different story frames, all at once. So this is going to help you in line centers to get you in positions. Now washboard is all lines of indication, lines of grounds, layers after layers after layers. Once you're finishing line rotations, you change graph communication that's webbing that indicates lines of screen adaptation of flux. This is what it looks like in travel. Okay. Now you bring it in really close, you can see the dimensional layers. See, those are the layers, right? Different layers, different space, different time, different graphs, different streams, different time frame, right? Lacing lines, guys, that's all it is at T reception. That's all it is in track communications off the location. So modifying that, this is all happening inside a TV, inside the TV itself, right? So this helps you to put you in positions, so you go through Schumann resonance of indications of voice panels or direct lines of grounds, right? Graphing your screens. It's bringing in position lines of false over narrative. Of traffic communication lines of settings. Subtraction. There's a graph. Okay. There's the sonar, echo line. And here's your mapping settings over screen adaptation of flux. Different communication setting, X2000s, they can come in any platform of communication because it's all in your mind of imagination. See? So you're constantly expanding yourself, growing inside yourself, coming into the construct which you already know through locations. Put your higher lines of communication, how you see that inside lines system, to its lines of travel. face recognition. See, there's the face, there's the eye, there's the nose, right? There's always a face, always a face. It's always a face in recognition. Hey, there's the face, see? There's the mouth, right? It's not drawing what you know, it's drawing what you are. You don't need to know these things. You just have to identify you already know. I noticed that through travel, see? It's expanding itself. So you just have to understand how to expand yourself, because everything around you is always expanding itself, but it's all identified what it is. I am what I am. So that's how it works with all face recognition. Okay, there's another face, right? So hopefully you get a better understanding how this all works in scent lines of travel. We'll get that, indicate lines of grounds, and scent lines of communication system. Now, platitude lines, I want you guys to get your TV frame. Your test is based on how you see yourself in full figure of just dimensional layers. Start position with 12, 24, all the way to 144, and set communication. All through travel and set position operation, right? So I want you to set your lines of divisions in 12-dimensional being of light. So that's 12D. Set position of 0. Set lines of 12D. Set position of 24. Set position of 0. Set positions and settings of 24D. And same thing. So 0, 0, 0. Set positions, all levels, parameter, location setting into your set tractions. Process and position lines of 40 measure. In position of 0 calculations and 40 line scale. Set position of 72 computer frame. Set travels in point lines of graph into 144 flux. Into all levels. Once you reach 144, you'll go above the system. Your travels at point lines of graph is now the void itself. Void equals negative over 0. And set travel communication. Okay. So that's the test. That's what I want to see. All right. How you indicate that in setting in all dimensional layers of 12. So 12 signatures. Set position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 platforms of communication. Okay. And basically you get 5 line rotations and grounds of property. There's the structure of the building. The embedding system. Okay, that's just through 12. And you look at this way, you can see the platforms of communication setting. Okay, so that's what I want to see. Okay, that's your test on Friday. And it travels all together, right? So that puts position as 12 layers, 24 layers, 48 frames. Okay, 24 layers of clocking, 48 layers of frames, 72 computer framing, and 144 flux of time framing, which is massing the volume, how you come in position of -0. That indicates positional levels. Once you reach 144, everything around you of 144 clocking disappears. Comes in cloak and dagger, incognito. It's just not there. Okay, because you're going above the system now. You're going below the scale. Okay, you're going above the metric, the meters. You're going faster in space, guys. And that's how you vast volume to velocity locations, your perimeters, that process you to the void equals lines of -0. Okay. And then you come into the negative over lines of pi, and then pi over negative. That gets in position lines of setting. Now, once you come into the, make sure that you get in 12 line division, you have 3 lines of alignment. Okay, because that times your capacitor, your flux capacitor, time box frame. Process positions here and scent lines of travel. Okay, so it's important you understand that, right? Because you're looking at the past, present, and future, all set lines of travels in course of communication and crop circle. Okay, and you look above, you see the galaxy of alignments of your planet and your solar system. Here, okay, your galaxy alignments, your cosmos, your colossal and screen lines adaptations, the process and position lines of set travels in directions of your planets, which is your past, your present, and your future of framing. Converting that position lines of travel, process lines of 144 flux over communication setting calculations, energetic dome. There it is, done by equation. So that's your test on Friday. Okay? All right. So it's a good start for Monday lines of sequence and communication lines of grounds. And set calculations. All right? And once you see that, you see it traveling all at once. Right? The faster you go, the more you see the portals and stargates coming together in set lines of sequence, working together in unity in one formation. Portals and stargates working all together, all in one. Okay? And then you travel through it. See? You travel through it. See? But you have to send the dimensional layers first in all different angles, synchronicity, and see it through location setting, through string theory and locations. See all the platforms that you go through? See the disk lines and screen adaptation of flux of communication, all through setting of operation. Okay? That's your test. Okay? All right. Hope you guys had fun. Take it easy. Have a great day.